To create clean surfaces in Blender, you don't need to be an expert. You need to understand how to control your geometry, and that is something you can learn. In the previous video, we modeled some small mushrooms using subdivision modeling, but now we are going to take it to the next level, creating a set of dishes from scratch. We are going to model a teacup, a plate, and a teapot, keeping everything simple and using support loops to shape our surfaces with more control. For this tutorial, we need the Loop Tools add-on, which you can activate from Blender's preferences. And with that, we're ready to get started. We're going to continue with our organic modeling practice. First of all, I'm going to delete everything I have in my scene, and what we're going to do on this occasion is a small dinnerware set. So let's start with the simplest thing, which will be the plate. I'm going to create a circle here, and here, in the creation panel, I'll tell it to fill this with triangles. And this is going to be the main base of my dish. I'll enter edit mode, and I'm also going to create another loop for the outer edge. I will press E and then S, and I scale it a little bit outward. I do this so that when I apply the subdivision modifier, the surface will appear smooth and correct. Because if the outer edge is directly connected to this central vertex, which has many other vertices connected to it, it simply won't look very good. So, we have this. I'm going to select this edge now, extrude it a bit on the Z-axis, something that's approximately in this form, and then I adjust its size accordingly. And now, once more, I'm going to extrude this along the Z-axis, and then I'll scale it up just a little bit more. And there you have it. This is the initial silhouette for my dish. I can adjust this a little bit more here. And I'm going to scale this up a bit more too. Okay then. So that's the initial outline of our object, and now we want to give it some volume. I'll go to the modifiers, press Shift A, and add the solidify modifier. By default, solidify is always negative, as we have it here at -1. If we set it to 1, it extrudes upwards. I prefer to keep it at 0 so it extrudes in both directions. So here we already have volume, and the next step would be to add subdivisions. I'm going to create another modifier. I'll press Shift A, and then I'll type in subdivision surface. And here we have the subdivision modifier applied. So now we have this geometry that's been smoothed out, and I can add another level of subdivision to it. However, when we add it, we lose the clearly defined angles that we previously had. I'll turn it off so you can see it. Here, initially, we have those marked angles that are important to preserve. So one effective way to preserve them is by simply applying the bevel modifier. I'll activate the geometry visualization here. Remember that you can find this button in this specific area within the viewport display settings under wireframe. I placed it in my quick favorites, like this. And we activate this geometry to visualize the bevel modifier we're applying. So here I'll press Shift A, and then we'll add the bevel modifier. You can see it immediately cuts this edge on the outside, but it hasn't touched any of the other angles. I'm going to adjust the thickness here to reduce it a bit, and the bevel is created based on angles. So in this case, all angles of 30 degrees or more will get this bevel. It's like this angle here, and this one over there must have less than that. We're going to keep on reducing it until it finally appears. I moved it there, and at 27, this one finally showed itself. I'm going to move it just a little bit more, and then the second one will appear. So now we'll go ahead and add the subdivision modifier. Once again, it should be looking much better. I'm going to place the bevel modifier second here in the stack, and then we'll turn subdivision back on, and you can see how much better these edges are preserved. Well, here I can adjust the thickness a little more. Slightly increase it so that the edge does not remain so straight. Something like this makes it more rounded. And with the solidify, I'm going to add just a bit more thickness. And there we go, we have our first piece right here, which is this little plate. Now the second piece we'll be making is the cup. And for the cup, we're going to use a different method. I'm going to hide the plate, and then I'll press Shift A, and we are going to create any object, in this case, a plane. In edit mode, I will press M and at center to collapse them all in the center. Remember that I have vertex selection activated here, and we're going to create the silhouette of a cup, which would be something more or less like this. So here in edit mode, I extrude it, move it along the x-axis, and extrude a couple more times. Something like that. And just as it is, I'm going to add the screw modifier. When I do it, that outline immediately turns into geometry. Let's try to improve the outline of this cup, something like this. So we have the silhouette of our cup. I'm going to press Alt-H to reappear the plate, and here I want to adjust the size proportion. In this case, I think we can make the cup bigger. I press Alt-Z, then move it along the Z-axis, and scale it down just a little bit. And here in the center, I'll make sure it's positioned perfectly in the middle. I'll scale it a little bit more, and that's it. And now, we're going to give it some thickness with the solidify modifier. Let's add the solidify modifier. I'm going to set this value to 0, and it will increase the thickness. Let's keep manipulating and adjusting this silhouette. Alright, I think that looks good there. And we're also going to add the subdivision surface modifier. We're going to apply the subdivision surface modifier, and what you'll observe is that right in the middle, as you can see, this is not properly joined together. To make it connect well in the center, I'll go to the screw modifier, and then we activate the merge option. And here, we move this vertex until it connects perfectly in the middle. I'm going to add a few more subdivisions, and this top edge looks very harsh. It's just too flat. So, in edit mode, I'm going to move it back a little bit. In this exact way. Another thing we can notice is that in the center, we have a kind of star. To make sure it doesn't look like that, we'll go back to edit mode. And we have to place a vertex here, very close to the vertex that's in the middle. I'm going to select these two and press W, subdivide, then move this vertex with double G, so it's very close to the center. And in this way, it should be corrected. Okay, that's just perfect. If we want the edges to be a little more pronounced, we can create a new subdivision using W and subdivide, and then position it very close to another edge. And that way, we're going to make the edges much more defined. However, in this particular case, I actually prefer how it looked initially, so I'll just leave it as it is. Alright, I'm going to make the plate reappear. We also need to make sure that the thickness of the cup makes sense in relation to the plate. I think that in this particular case, it looks good. And we are going to attach the handle to this little cup. So once again, I hide the plate, and we are going to create a plane. I'm going to scale it. And in the side view, I'm going to move it over here. I press Alt-Z for the X-ray view. And I'm really looking for a size that is consistent with the thickness of this handle. That would be more or less like this. I'm going to extrude it here. I am trying to create a silhouette that is exactly like this for the cup handle. And here, we're going to apply the solidify modifier to it as well. I'm going to set this particular setting to 0. I'm going to increase the thickness and apply the subdivision surface modifier. I'll add another subdivision, and then it's just a matter of adjusting the thickness. I can also try the offset by moving it a little bit inwards. And in this part, for example, that doesn't fully penetrate the cup. I can move it a little bit more towards the interior, something like that. And for this one right here, it's the same thing. And with that, everything is perfectly finished. I can scale this up a little bit more on the x-axis, so it becomes a little bit thicker. And I'm going to adjust it a little bit more on this curve, so it looks much more rounded. Alright, that's perfect. So then I'll just reappear all, and we'll already have our second piece, which is the little cup. We're going for the third one, that's going to be the teapot. So I'm going to hide all of this. I'm going to press Shift A, and in this specific instance, we're going to create a UV sphere. As you can observe, we always try to start with the geometry that most closely resembles the model we're about to build. Given that the plate is similar to a circle, we'll begin by creating a circle, and because the teapot is mostly spherical, we will then create a UV sphere. Now, here in the segment section, I'm going to reduce this. Remember that the less we have here, the easier it is to control. And we are also going to reduce the rings. Around here at 12 is enough. I'm going to come over to the side view by pressing the 3 key. We need to make sure that we are in the side view, and then I'll enter edit mode. I'm going to select everything and scale it just a little bit on the Z-axis. In X-ray view, I'm also going to scale this along the Z-axis, and then I'll press 0 so that all of the vertices end up at the same 0 point. I'll move it up just a bit, and since the teapot has a small lid on its top section, I'm going to select this specific loop and then press V. By doing it this way, we can separate that small piece from the top. We're going to keep adding the modifiers to visualize it better. I'll start by putting a subdivision surface. In this case, we're going to begin by working with a subdivision, and then we will add the solidify modifier. I'm going to bring its value to 0, and then slightly increase the thickness. If we activate the X-ray vision, this is what we're going to see. It really starts to look much more like a teapot. Then we'll need to attach the spout right here, the handle on the rear section, and the little knob where the lid is held. So I'm going to go back to edit mode. I'm going to turn off the solidify here for a moment, and I'm going to select a vertex from this spot. I make sure it's this vertex, the one that's right at the front. And I'm going to eliminate it, and then we're going to be left with this hole. And now, what I want to do is select this hole, and I'll use my Loop Tools add-on to turn it into a circle. I'll click on Circle. And it turns into a circle that will be easier for the nozzle. I'll move it a little this way. I'll rotate it a bit. I'll extrude it, rotate it, and scale it to create the nozzle silhouette. I'm going to adjust these shapes over here. And I'm going to extrude it one more time, and then I'll scale it. We've already got this part. It might be a little bit too long, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller with a double G. It looks much better now. And I'm going to turn Solidify on again to see how it turns out. In this case, it's very thick, so I'm going to reduce it a little bit. Now, in the section at the very bottom, I also want this edge to be a little more defined down here. So with Ctrl R, I'm going to create a support loop. And what this does is make the angle look a bit more pronounced. I will turn on the Solidify again. And there we go. At this point, we can now add the other subdivision surface. I'm going to press Shift A, then we'll add the subdivision surface, and we're going to set it to, I think that 2 levels will be quite sufficient. Okay, perfect. This little cap, I can actually do something with it. I'll select it using the L key, then press S and Z to squash it down a little bit, and then I'll move it downwards, so that it will fit more appropriately. I can create a UV sphere to position it on the very top section, where the teapot's small lid is grasped. I scale it just a little bit on the Z-axis, then I adjust it better here, and I also apply the subdivision surface modifier. And finally, we're going to add the handle. Since we already created a handle for the cup, I'll just duplicate it. I'll hide the other objects, and then I'll adjust it to this brand new model. By using Ctrl X, I'm able to dissolve some of the segments and make it better suited to this new geometry. Okay, in this case, I feel that it's still much too thin. So, in the Solidify modifier, I'm going to increase its thickness. I'll press Shift to do it with a little more precision. and then our teapot would be completely and utterly finished. I'm going to reduce solidify a bit more, and then we're done. I'm going to unhide everything else with Alt-H, and then all that remains is to adjust the scale of my objects. I'm going to select all the objects of the teapot, move it upwards. I'll move it over here. And something we can do to better manipulate objects is to parent them. For instance, I'll separate this lid from the model. So I'll activate the display here. I press L, and then I press P. I'll separate the selection, and it will remain separated. What I'm going to do next is select these two objects, and then press Shift while clicking on the cup, and then I'll press Ctrl P, parent to object. So when I move this object, everything that's related to it is going to move. Similarly, I can parent this little ball to the lid by pressing Ctrl P, parent to object. And if I move the lid, the little ball will move along with it. And if I move the cup, then both the lid and the ball will move. I still need to parent this handle. I'm going to do the same, Ctrl P. Likewise, I'm going to parent the cup's handle with Ctrl P. And that's it. So if I scale the cup, all the models that are parented to it will also scale. Here, I simply make the adjustment to match the size of all the other things. I can lower this cap a bit so it fits better. And the final step would be to select all and apply Shade Smooth to make it perfectly smooth. And so we now have our complete dinnerware set. It's an organic modeling process, but it's much more controlled than the initial objects. And here I'm going to add some extra touches to this scene to create a nice presentation that can be rendered. Basically, I'm going to create new geometries. With a UV sphere, I'm going to make a little cookie by scaling it on the Z-axis. A bit later on, I'm also going to add liquid to the little cup, simply by extruding a circle. And finally, I will create a composition using all these objects, and then I'll import the scene where I've set up the lighting to produce the final render. So here, With just a little bit of extra work, we have managed to create a very simple composition. I've gone ahead and added a small amount of coffee to this cup and also some delicious cookies. And with this, my friends, we have reached the conclusion of this tutorial. I hope you have learned a lot from this video, and if you want to learn blendering depth, I invite you to check out my Blender course for beginners. You have the link in the description. I will also be uploading a lot more content to the channel, so I invite you to subscribe if you want to stay updated. I hope you have a lot of fun modeling, and see you in the next video.